Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll give it a few minutes as people start funneling in, and then we'll kick things off. All right, why don't we get started? Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Neota Network. This one is one of our live fireside chats, so welcome. We'll have a few more people funneling in, but we'll sort of take them as they come in. Today, really excited. We are talking to Scott Rechtschaffen, and Scott is the Chief Knowledge Officer over at Littler Mendelsohn. And actually, Scott, why don't I let you introduce yourself? I've been doing a lot of talking today.
I have to say, Max, I've been waiting for the shipment of the fireplace. I mean, I thought you were going to send me, at least one of those.
Yeah, one of those little ones with the fan in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm the Chief Knowledge Officer at Littler. I've been doing this about 20 years. I have a team of about 60 fabulous people, including about half of those are attorneys. The other half are just tremendously skilled professionals, and they all make my life very easy.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us, Scott. We really appreciate it. And today we wanted to, generally dig in and understand, how Littler drives innovation and what sort of successes you've seen and any tips and tricks, and just sort of dig in. And to everyone who's joining us, we want to keep this interactive, so feel free to post some questions in the Q&A section as we go through. I've got a bunch of questions that we'll get to, but we definitely want to make sure that you're heard as well. So feel free to chime in. And actually, why don't we kick it off with sort of a question. So, Scott, how's Littler leveraging the Neota platform? Something just general. How have you interacted with Neota in the past?
Well, it's interesting, and I won't go off on a tangent too much, but I really should explain how we started working with Neota, because it's an interesting story. So I don't know, maybe over 20 years ago, I had worked with a software called Janana, which allowed you to build decision trees, and then in the early, let's see, it was mid 2000s, later on, maybe around 2010. I had an idea that, I was noticing that there were some things that our clients, and I should explain for the audience that we are strictly a labor and employment firm. We have 1,000 US attorneys, another 600 or so outside the US, but all we do is labor and employment. And I started noticing that there were some things that clients had traditionally called their labor lawyer for, certain questions, that they weren't calling us about anymore. Like the two that I thought were most prominent were, can I classify an employee as exempt from overtime? That was one, historically, in creating a new job position, clients would call their lawyer and say, is this exempt or not? The other one was, can I engage a worker as an independent contractor? And I surmised that, as one of our managing directors always said, our biggest competitor is Google. And I think for employment law questions, that's very, very true. It's just, why pay $400, $500, $600 an hour to talk to a lawyer when you can get the answer on Google? The problem is, Google may give you the wrong answer. Google may not know the nuances of your particular industry or your particular business. So I went looking for that Janana software, thinking, well, to determine whether someone's overtime exempt or an independent contractor is just following a decision tree. And I couldn't find that software anywhere. The company had ceased to operate, and I just could not locate that software. Finally, I think I was having dinner with Ron Friedman one night, and he said, oh, I heard someone just bought that software. So I kept digging, and I talked to everybody I knew in the knowledge management network, and finally someone said, oh yeah, Michael Mills bought it. And I had known Michael at that point for many, many years, and I reached out to Michael, and he said, yes, I co-founded this company, Neota Logic, and we started talking. And it just sort of grew from there. We initially did a pilot. This was in 2014, I believe, when the Affordable Care Act had passed. And we built a very nice little app that advised employers on whether they should cover their workers or pay the penalties under the Affordable Care Act. And it was something we gave away, and it generated a lot of business for our employee benefits attorneys because the clients invariably had follow-up questions. So it was a nice little elegant app, and Megan Barlowen, one of the CAIM attorneys on our team, spearheaded that, working with 3 or 4 subject matter experts, and it worked out great. So we took it and went from there. At some point a little later on, Michael had introduced me to John Lord, the co-founder, and we talked about doing a joint venture to bring employment-related apps to the market. And that's when we started building out 2 apps that would answer these questions, whether someone is overtime exempt and whether someone could be engaged as an independent contractor. And those are actually not straightforward questions. The Independent Contractor Act issue, for example, is not only controlled on a state-by-state basis, but even with a state, it depends on what agency you're in front of. So the state labor agency might have a different standard than the unemployment people or the workers' comp people. So we had to, for that one, analyze about 1,500 cases and develop the logic to put into the software. It took months, many meetings with subject matter experts. On the overtime exempt, it was about 2,000 cases and statutes that had to be reviewed and analyzed. So that also took months. But we finally did it, and now we have those 2 apps that are really the heart of the suite that our joint venture, Compliance HR, offers. And they're really just, they provide a great risk assessment, they provide a risk analysis report, and tons of usage. And the company has just grown beautifully.
Yeah, you know what? And actually, that's a good point to sort of move on right there. Is okay. So you've got these solutions. So how do you measure success? Like, how do you determine the success of a solution? Is there sort of a go-to that you use, or is it sort of dependent on the solution?
Well, in the case of those types of commercial applications, it's the voice of the customer. It's in the feedback you're getting, and the customer telling you, yes, this is what I want. And then also you follow the usage statistics and see, with any kind of app like this, there are highs or lows. I remember just before the 2016 election, the former administration had put into effect some brand new overtime rules. So interest in that application shot up through the roof. With the 2016 election, things sort of dropped off as people perceived that the regulatory environment was not going to be as strict.
Yeah, that's interesting that, obviously the need for apps shifts depending on the climate, that it's just the nature of, yeah.
Sure. I mean, obviously COVID is a great example. We, I think it was March 2020, April 2020, saw, some, or maybe it might have been later, might have been over the summer, people interested in, maybe returning to the office. Well, how do we do that safely? So we very quickly spun up an app that allows employers to send out an email or text every day to their employees, and the employees can indicate whether they have any symptoms. And then the app says, yes, you're green, you can go into the office, or red, no, you better stay home and contact HR. That's a product called Smart Screen that I think, working with the team at Compliance HR, Joe Panza and Claire Allenstock, and my team, Megan and Jason Dirks, I think we spun that up in about 3 weeks. And it's been a fabulous app. And again, you're able to modify. Again, it's the beauty of the software. that you can change things. So after we had that up and running and a lot of strong client interest, we started hearing from clients, hey, can we track vaccination status as well? So that was added to the application. So now you can track, employees can indicate their vaccination status, and the employer or HR gets a dashboard which they can quickly look and not only see who's symptomatic, but now they can see who's vaccinated or not. And then more recently, we've added even more functionality, because now with employers moving to vaccine mandates, employers are just getting deluged with requests for accommodation on either a religious or a medical basis. And normally an employer, an HR department gets a couple of requests a year for religious accommodation, or a work schedule, or something like that, or similarly medical. Those trickle in. Now they're coming in waves. We've heard stories of companies getting hundreds, if not thousands, of requests for accommodation. So we've added to the app the functionality to be able to track these requests and provide quick responses to, the employees can submit their request online. The employer can generate responses specific to what the employee has requested. So it allows tracking of these hundreds and thousands of requests. It's really, and again, the team built it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you know what, that's an interesting part I'd like to talk a little bit about, is as you're talking about this journey, as you're talking about sort of the team building and what makes you go or move more towards a no-code solution like Neota than a bespoke system, or other vendors, other types of tools there? Like, it obviously rapid development seems to be a core component to it.
Rapid development is important, and Neota is one tool in our toolbox.
Yep.
And it all depends on what's the use case, what are the business needs, and is this something that we want? Some things that Neota can't do, and it's not a lot, but there are some things. And if we tend to look at, does this require logic and reasoning? Does it require workflow? All of the things we can get from the Neota tool. But again, there are other tools we use, depending on the application and also who's using it. Some people are more comfortable with, simpler. Look, we unfortunately still have people who say, no, I just want an Excel spreadsheet. Because they've been using Excel spreadsheets for 20 years. So,
and sometimes that solves what you're looking to do. Hey, I want to do financials, or I want to do, hey, sometimes the spreadsheet is best way.
Yeah. No, we have one use case right now, where our privacy practice group has been sending out these questionnaires to their clients to help do audits of various privacy issues. And they've been doing it in Microsoft Word, and that's fine. The problem is, on the client side, there are multiple people who have input into their systems or into the audit regarding their systems. So you have multiple people, they're all responding at different times. So it was impossible to just have an attorney get on the phone or get on email and talk to the client because of these issues. So the Word document seemed a better methodology. But now we have an intake form, and the intake form can be completed by multiple people at different times. And then the results come back, and when it's finished, and our attorneys can review it. And so it really cuts down on the inefficiencies of having an attorney personally do this, or having the client just use a Word document. So it's a perfect use case.
Yeah. Interesting. Actually, we've had a few questions come in from the audience here. One person's asking how you plan out your application. So how do you manage and prioritize your pipeline? What dictates your priorities?
That's a terrific question. It really depends on, again, the use case. There's, it's like the team was working on a really interesting app, which we haven't released yet, but we will. And then all of a sudden, we came up with this vaccine accommodation thing. So we sort of had to pivot a little bit to get that done. So priorities constantly shift. My team will tell you they've had some things they've been working on for a long time, but they're sort of they're great, but they're not being developed for exigent circumstances, so they can be deferred a little bit. So it's a challenge. And then also, we look at market conditions, and when I say market conditions, that might be amongst our user group, our attorneys, how many people will benefit from this application. And same thing on the client side, how many clients will actually use this? Is this a niche type of product? We have, and then also when I say market conditions, it's also a question of, a great example, our workplace safety group is really under the gun these days. I mean, workplace safety used to be this sleepy little practice area, and now it's exploded. And
it's in it's in a whole bunch of news articles now,
Yeah.
to open any website for a newspaper.
Yeah, and some of the workplace safety documentation that they've historically done is just getting pushed to the side because they're answering questions on a daily basis about workplace safety and COVID-related issues. Johnny Wong on our team is now working on developing an application to help with this documentation process and enabling the attorneys to respond to those requests that they're really just not, they don't have time to deal with.
Oh, that's interesting. So that prioritization obviously comes up on it's
always shifting.
Cool. Wanted to sort of shift gears a little bit and talk about sort of the different personas on your team of what, you mentioned you have a team that's half lawyers and half non-lawyers. Is that a shift you've seen in the industry? Is that something like when you're looking to bring someone on, is it necessary for someone to have that legal expertise or an understanding of the industry to be effective at sort of?
It really helps, but we have different roles. So on my team, we have 20 KM attorneys, and I think it's about 20. And they've all practiced law. They all have JDs, and some have different levels of experience than others. Some practiced labor and employment for 20 years, some not as much. And so it really helps. I mean, there was a time when I would hire a new KM attorney and they would say, I'm really not very comfortable with technology. And I would say, of course not, you're a lawyer. Don't worry about that. We have people to deal with the technology. More and more, I don't get that question. More and more our attorneys say, yeah, I can handle, SharePoint and technology. And then we have a great, tech team within KM, about 5 people. And they do the hands-on work. So the attorneys might develop the design documents, but then we have a great team to do the build. That really helps.
That's interesting. And actually something that's come up in other sessions in particular is, being a law firm is majority made up of lawyers, is that a few people in different sessions have asked, and we've got a question here as well, is how do you engage with the attorney base, not just the ones in KM, but the rest of the firm? Is there a way that best manages attorneys in the innovation process? Do you engage them at particular times? Is it case by case basis? So, can they submit ideas? Is it?
Yeah. We really believe that innovation is everybody's job, and it's not up to a committee. I mean, we do have an innovation committee, but it's not their job to come up with the ideas. It's their job to really encourage ideas and review the ones that come in. We've done 2 things to sort of impress this point. First of all, I think it was 2 years ago, we ran what we call the West Fastiff Ingenuity Award, and West Fastiff is one of our founding partners. And this is open to absolutely everybody in the firm, professional staff, as well as attorneys, and it's global, so it's every office. And we ask for submissions for a great idea, something you've done, something you want to do, and it can be technology related, it can be marketing related, it could be just basically how your office operates. And I think the first year we got 40 submissions, and went through a rigorous round of judging, and the winner was a team that had a great proposal in the diversity and inclusion space. And we're kicking that off again. We're going to run that contest again. And then we did something last year called Innovate 100. And this was open only to associates, again, on a global basis. And we asked associates to form teams and come up with a great innovative idea. And I think we had, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 30 submissions. And we picked the 4 best. We then assigned people from the professional departments to work with them. So if it was a marketing idea, we'd bring someone from the marketing department. If it was a KM related idea, someone from the KM. So they had, in effect, mentors. And then they worked over the course of 100 days to build out their idea and or at least design it. So scripted, storyboarded, whatever. And then the hope was to have an in-person hackathon at our global service center, where over the weekend they'd actually build it. We couldn't obviously do that, so we had to do it virtually, and it was a great event. I mean, we had a lot of social things in the mix. We had a wine and cheese party. They did all sorts of things, and it was fabulous. And of the 4 teams, we picked best overall, best design. We had different awards. One of the ideas is now in place, off and running. Another one is in development. So I actually think all 4 of them could someday be put into effect. So again, it's passing the message on to the associates that you're the ones at the front lines. You're the one doing the work day in and day out. You know what's inefficient. You know what could be done better. And I think it really worked really well.
That's that's really interesting, especially with I'm sure people would get jazzed about that. Just it's something new, something fresh, and they get to input in something that, like you said, there's a solution out there in the world. There's an end result.
Yeah, it's when you talk about attorney adoption and how do you get buy-in, a couple things. First of all, don't talk about the technology. Talk about the problem and the solution. Lawyers don't care what technology platform you're using. They really don't. We try not to label things as, this is such and such a technology. No, this is what it does. This is the problem it solves. And then the ideas that get adopted the best are the ones that come from the attorneys themselves. And it also, in terms of development, it's better when the attorneys are proposing it. I remember in the early days of document automation, I went around to all the corporate departments saying, hey, we've got this document automation, and this is before Neota had document automation capabilities. We've got this document automation software. What can we, so I went to the people who were in charge of, the intake people, we could automate your engagement agreements. And they said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Never heard back from them.
It's a solution in search for a problem.
That's right. And then finally, a couple of years ago, the person in charge of that department came to us and said, I really need to automate the engagement agreements. And from there, development was straightforward. A lot of issues because engagement agreements are not as straightforward. There's state variables. But we had someone who really wanted this. So she and her team worked very closely with us to get it going.
That's really interesting. And actually someone from the audience is just piping in. They're mentioning they've got an innovation week coming up. And they were just wondering if you had any more tips or tricks for encouraging a culture of innovation.
Yeah, and innovation week is a great idea. I've heard of a couple firms doing things like that. There's one firm, I'm blanking on who it is, that had an innovation day where they told everybody to put their pens down and get in groups and start talking about better ways of doing things. Difficult to get a lawyer to put a pen down or a keyboard down. So whatever you can do to make it part of the culture. And again, don't focus on the technology. Focus on, is there a better way to do things? Is there a better way to serve our clients, to improve quality, to improve consistency. Don't focus on, gee, where can we deploy Neota logic? No, look around for, who's having problems, who's having pain points, whether it's on the client side or the attorney side. You want to solve problems, not deploy technology.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's also answering another question we got in, which is, is it possible to understand the tech side without being a tech expert? And like, could a lawyer understand sort of what's capable of the technology? But it sounds like just start with the problem. Without the problem,
Yeah,
nothing to solve.
that's right. That's right. And I often say, never go to an attorney with a blank piece of paper. Because when you're doing business requirement gathering, don't go with a blank piece of paper. Give them ideas. Let them tell you, hey, that's a great idea, or no, that'll never work. But you've got to get them started, because initially they look at you like, I don't have a clue. But once you get them talking about the work they do, and what is it that you do day after day after day, that first of all, the client isn't valuing anymore, and B, is something that you think is a waste of your time. It's I always like, back in the days when we had associates who would sit in conference rooms reviewing documents, or either on screen or in bankers' boxes. I used to say, I missed that class in law school where they taught us how to do that. That's not a good use of an attorney's time. And as we've seen, technology has taken care of that to a great extent. But I always come back to the use case. Talk to the attorneys about what they're doing.
And that's where it'll live, I guess. Yeah. Well, that's great. Good stuff. So I know we're getting to near the end of our time, Scott, but I thought it'd be good just to do one or two blue sky thinking of, what you see as, where are things heading in 2022 in terms of the legal tech space, or in, your sector with your team. Like, what do you see as the next mountain that the industry is looking to climb?
Well, I think, there's, are we at the tipping point yet? Is the huge amount of investment dollars that are pouring into the legal tech space, is that going to do it? I think, in companies doing IPOs, there's definitely a sea change coming. I can't predict the future as to, who will win. I think what we need to see is more law firm, and I look at things from the law firm perspective. I think more law firms have to get in the game and have to start partnering with legal tech companies, which is a difficult thing to do from both sides. Legal tech companies want to, grow equity, and law firms want to grow revenue. So it's always a challenge, but the partnerships are inevitable. And, we have to accept the fact that there is a lot of legal work that's being done now, that's been done in the past, that's not going to be owned by law firms anymore. There are other providers who will do it more efficiently. So we as law firms have to find other better uses of our talent. And I'm not predicting doom and gloom for law firms. As long as there are legislators at the federal, state, or local level, there will be new laws. And that's really what lawyers need to do, is to deal with those new laws coming out and come up with creative ways of addressing them. But don't fight the tide that there's certain aspects of what you do that are going away. No more than we fought the loss of our libraries full of books when online research came. No more than we lost our dictaphones when word processing came along. You can't fight the tide. Things that we've done a certain way are going to be done differently in the future. Learn to adapt to it.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining me today. And anyone interested in learning more about compliance HR, there's a talk tomorrow, tomorrow's Neota network on there. So feel free to subscribe to that one. And thank you again, Scott. Really insightful and very helpful. To everyone else, thank you for joining us. I think this has been another successful Neota network piece, and a lot more to come in the rest of day one, and even more tomorrow in day 2. So thank you everyone again for joining us. Thank you again, Scott. And look forward to seeing you in person one day. Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Max. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.